Hello everyone. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge the original owners of the land and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'm here to officially open this conference and to welcome you all, and I'm very happy to do that. I'm very grateful to Ursula, to Brooke and all the team down at the Graduate Research Office for organising this and making my life very easy. I am quite busy, but I've got what I think is probably the best job in the university, which is just looking after higher degree candidates. That's what I do. I do it 2 days a week, and then I go to my office and I compile indexes. So it's really a great privilege to work for you, and it's nice to be able to meet you. I'm organising some more informal places we can meet, the first one being here in Hobart for morning tea, and I'll be rolling that out across all campuses in the CBD, up in Cradle Coast, in Launceston. So I hope eventually to get to talk to all of you, because it seems sad that often I only meet you when you're walking across a platform and I'm mispronouncing your name and trying to read the technical details of your project summary. So it'd be nice to get to know you earlier. Now, so I'm based in the administration building, which is next to this building, if you ever needed me. And we have a small division called the Office of the Dean of Graduate Research. And it seems odd that we're geographically a little bit further away from the Graduate Research Office. But it's worth knowing where we are in case you need to find us. And I just want to point out two people. Firstly, the Deputy Dean, Chris Sterling, who's there. There she is, she waved. But also the Senior Executive Officer, Denby Armstrong, who's next to her, who is in the office every day, working away at important things and interpreting figures for me, so that's really useful. Now, we would like to think we're accessible, and we are, but the building isn't. I have to admit that. There's a locked door between me and you, but it's easy to email me, and we can get round that if you wanted to make an appointment. And I have seen a few of you already, so just wanted to emphasise that. Although I'm behind this locked door, I'm actually quite happy to chat to people. It's just one of those things. There's some very important people also behind that locked door, I guess. I hope that you're delighted that we're running this conference during Research Week, the idea being to confirm our belief in the office that you are part of our research community. You're not students anymore, you're our colleagues. You're doing the research that's going to make us look like dinosaurs, and we really want to nurture you and make you feel part of that community. So I hope you've taken the opportunity to go to some of the events that are opened up this week. I know some of you have been to some events that are particularly tailored to candidates yesterday around mental health, publishing, crowdfunding, expressing gratitude between supervisors and candidates. So I hope those of you that went have good things to say about those. It would be great to know what went well and what you think could be done better so that we can do it better. That's the idea of these events, that we continuously improve them. But the main thing, I think, of these events, like when you're doing the graduate certificate, is that you get out of your faculties and schools and labs and dusty offices and you mix with people who are doing projects which are wildly different from yours. And for me, the exciting thing of academic life is talking to people who have nothing to do with my research. Sometimes it's just much less boring for a start. So I do encourage you, and I'm sure you are doing it, to mingle, to look at posters that seem to have no direct relevance to anything you're doing, and to kind of relax and let your mind run free over the next couple of days. We welcome you also because you come from so many different backgrounds and countries, and you've all come to the university for your own specific reasons, but hopefully because it's a great university to work and to do research, and it's getting better all the time. You just have to look at the world rankings, but I don't have any charts because I'm not a chart person, but believe me when I say this is a very good, vibrant place to be. So I hope you enjoy your time in the next couple of days. Good luck for the many of you that are presenting posters or giving oral presentations. If it's the first time, it's like riding a bike, really. You'll get the hang of it. And here you'll get friendly feedback and support, which is what you need before you go into the sort of cut and thrust of academic conferences. Some of them can be quite unpleasant, but you're okay here. We're all working to support you. Congratulations also to the 3-minute thesis finalists. I hope to be able to watch some of those later today, but well done and good luck. I hope that all goes well. And I just hope you enjoy this bit of time to think outside of your specific research spaces and really enjoy the space we have here, the different ideas that are going to be shared, the possibilities for collaboration, and just really have a good time. And do have the beer and wine that is apparently on me. I wish I could join you, but I think I've got some high culture I said I'd go to tonight. So anyway, welcome. I officially declare this conference open, and have a great day.
Thanks very much, Imelda. And so I'm not sure what we're getting. I hope it's good. I'm sure it will be. Some of us have seen him before. He's a delight. He's an inspiration, and he kind of comes with a fresh set of very grounded ideas. I just do have to say, before I introduce him, that the staff have taken to calling you Captain Redbeard, which I think you'll actually be delighted about. Jason reminds me of one of my most favourite and inspirational thinkers, and that's Dr. Seuss, and he does bring that freshness and playfulness to his presentations. So we're delighted to have you, and we thank him for travelling down to be with us today. I'd ask you to warmly welcome Dr. Jason Fox. I should have actually said, being more formal, that Jason has a PhD in motivation science. He uses motivation science and game design to influence behaviour. And his most recent book, which actually will be for sale in the foyer, is called The Game Changer. And I just have to smile unofficially, which I suspect is Jason and his wife saying this. It's described as an heretical text, a slap in the face to conventional motivation, and also, excuse my language, a fucking brilliant contribution to the field of human behaviour. So someone who can not only write a book like that, but describe it like that, I think deserves our applause again.
So, thank you very much for this. It's really lovely to be here. I do a lot of work with corporate groups and businesses, and it's so frustrating because so many people want to jump to quick fixes and solutions, and this default motivational folklore that many of us in the world subscribe to that just doesn't really correlate to science. What I want to do for you today is share some insights in motivation strategy and design that may be useful in the context of research, because a lot of what's out there doesn't work in the game that we play. I don't know if anyone of you saw the video that I put together. The research game is just, perpetual vagary, punctuated by mental self-flagellation and long periods of angst and doubt and confusion after every meeting with your supervisor, and it perpetuates, and it eventually culminates into something brilliant. And the classic motivational interventions don't really work in this space, and nor should they, because most of them were based and born in the factory era, which is great for work that was highly predictable, formulaic stuff with predictable outcomes, but this stuff just doesn't work. So hopefully we'll share some insight with regards to that stuff so that you guys can leave, you've got some new insights and ideas on how you can make clever happen in your own world. I've got some framing to do. I might use these flip charts a little bit as we go through the session today. It's kind of this motivation thing is important. I'm curious. One of the things that I found is that the world of motivation. I don't know who here has been to a motivational presentation before, like a classic motivational presentation. Yeah. If you're like me, and I suspect that you are, because a lot of researchers think quite different. Actually, no, I should go back a little bit. This is a fundamental question. Who here is an introvert? Just put up your hand. Yeah, right, cool. So even the hardcore introverts don't even put up their hand. They just They just glance at you, and then they resume judging you as they, go back to their iPad or their, their laptop or something. So, which is great. I'm an introvert too. I'm a raging introvert, and the world of motivation is full of. It seems to be big teeth, shiny white teeth, alpha extroverted males who do a lot of fist pumping and rah-rah stuff that doesn't really translate. And so you can imagine what it's like for me when I've done my PhD in motivation stuff and do this introverted thing. I don't know if you guys do this with introverts, especially as researchers, right? When you hear people say stuff, you have the tendency to take what they say literally, particularly if they use the word literally. So if someone says, "Ha, that was so funny, I literally peed my pants," what I'll do is I'll look at their crotch and then I'll look back up at them and I'll think, why are you lying to me? And, because obviously, they've made a statement that hasn't been supported by any evidence, and then I'd think about, I'd just start to extrapolate what's going on here. Is there, did this start in childhood or where, I had one lady come up to me at a conference and say, "It is so cold in here, I am literally freezing my ass off." And this was interesting because I was just thinking, how could one do this so subtly? And so the best I could deduce was liquid nitrogen sachets, packs attached to the backside, which was slowly sloughing off her backside. But then, again, I got curious as to why she's making this life choice. Is everything okay at home? This kind of happens. You can imagine what it's like then, and I'm sure you can, as a researcher, as someone who actually thinks critically about information that's presented to them, how one might respond to the classic motivational cliches we often hear. My first experience with a motivational speaker was when I was in high school. I grew up in Western Australia. I live in Melbourne now, but I grew up in Bunbury, which is a couple of hours south of Perth. Many people drive past it on their way to Margaret River. And we had a 42-degree day. We couldn't afford many motivational speakers, so when we did have one, the whole school packed out the gymnasium room floor. Teachers were on their plastic chairs on the sidelines, and there was this guy standing on the sidelines with a pinstripe suit, sweating over his collars and stuff. And this is how he started his presentation for us to motivate us. You all need a checkup from the neck up. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay? Because right now, I see a whole bunch of amazing people, okay? But you don't realize how amazing you are. You don't realize how amazing you are, because in order to be amazing, you need to be amazing, okay? You need to be amazing. The moment you realize that you don't have to become a millionaire, you already are a millionaire whose money just has not been deposited in their bank account yet, okay? That is the day. In order to achieve, you need to believe. So I need you to repeat after me, okay? Conceive, believe, achieve, okay? Conceive, believe, achieve, achieve. Anyway, you gotta spit them. Anyway, I just did what any teenage boy would do. I just coughed the words bullshit into my hands. Not really. No, I wasn't that cool. I was like more of a mummy's boy. There was a cool kid near me that did that. I thought, oh, that's cool. Wish I had said that. It's a bit naughty. Anyway, it actually ended up having an effect. Like, we actually got enthusiastic. We got excited, and it was great. It was motivating, and it lasted all the way up until lunchtime, and then nothing really changed or happened after that. And this is what a lot of people confuse motivation with. And some of these great ideas, these notions that sound really lovely, don't translate into sustained motivation or behaviour change, which is what we want. I'm going to claim this one. So let's start to unpack what's going on here and extract what might be useful in a research context. Before we do that, though, what I'd like you to do. This is the part one of potentially 3 to 5 activities that go in the opposite direction of introversion. So it's going to be awkward and uncomfortable for the vast majority of us in the room. I saw, there was a fair few hands come up before, so no doubt some extroverts put up their hand because they love the attention and stuff. So you're going to be happy. For the rest of us, so immediately when we hear about interactive stuff, like it gets awkward and then you go through all these scenarios and stuff, and then you've got to put on your polite face and hope that you sit next to someone interesting and not more awkward than you are, or maybe that's better, I don't know what it is. But anyway, it's not going to culminate in hot coals or group massages or kumbaya or anything like that. It's going to be quite civil. The first thing I'd like you to do is find a temporary BFF. This is your best friend forever for the next, I don't know, what are we, maybe hour and 15 minutes? So make sure you've got someone to talk to, because part of what I'm going to be presenting, I also want you to contextualize, and that helps your learning if you actually verbalize some of this stuff. So you need to find a BFF, have a look around you. If there's someone on their own, if you're that introvert on your own, don't escape the room now. That's all right. Someone's going to look at you and they're going to give you a smile that's part sad puppy dog smile and part desperate, oh, how do I survive this social interaction smile? But it's going to work out. So first of all, I want you to find your BFF. If you're sitting next to someone, just do them, that's fine. Just give them a nod. If you're on your own, oh yeah, good nods over there. That was great. Introverts equivalent of a high five. The first activity I'd like you to do is I just want you to share with your BFF what's some classic motivational standard cliche advice or some sort of well-intended platitude that one of your friends who doesn't understand the research game or someone that you've seen has given you that just doesn't translate or work in this space. So a classic, it might be, believe and you will achieve, or as you visualize, you actualize, or, it might be something. What's something that people have said, and I'd like you to share that with your BFF. So I'll give you a chance to move. We'll do this for maybe about a minute, and then we'll come back. So let's go. And wrapping up your conversations, and magic. Good, oh wow, you do like to chat, this is lovely. Good, all right, more interactions ahead. Did anyone hear something that they thought was quite interesting and want to volunteer your BFF to share that with the wider group? Just subtly point to them and I'll bravely nominate them. We do have roving mics, but I don't think we need that. This just it. You can use your loud speaking voice and I'll repeat it. So, did anyone hear a particularly elegant platitude or motivational throwaway line that was given to you? Did I see a point? Wow, you're so... Oh, up here. Yeah, that's great. All right, can you use your big speaking voice?
Sure, my name's Indra and it all makes sense.
Yeah, just get it. Yeah. Thank you, Indra. That's a great formula. I love this. Just do insert simple activity, and you'll get this, right? Which people do not comprehend the complexities of our research in our world. It's wonderful how people have these simple solutions. Sometimes they actually do have stuff that works. Like I told you before, with this whole in business context, everyone wants to. The term that alpha executives love to say is, "Let's make shit happen," and what I prefer, and I'm sure many of you is no, let's actually make some good stuff happen. Let's actually think about this properly and make good things happen. But then sometimes there's another extreme where we can get lost in like the thinking and the cycles and things like that, but still coming in out there with some simple platitude or simple things like that doesn't really help. Anyone else got one? And I'll hear one more, maybe more of the classic motivational side of things, and then let's get into it. Let's choose something from over here. I might just volunteer someone at random, who knows. Oh, here we go. Oh, yes, okay. Beautiful, wonderful BFFs. Yeah, forever, best friends forever. Okay, what's your name? Trish, what would you like to share?
Yeah. I'm saying that some people say just visualise yourself looking across at graduation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It will all happen. Why don't you start a vision board? Go collect photos of other people walking up their graduations and stuff like that, and one day that can be, yeah, that's great. And so this is the thing, like people love to default to these simple solutions where the world is a lot more complex than this. One of the classic things that we often hear is just set a goal, like just set a really good goal, and then at its worst manifestation, it's set a SMART goal. Have you guys endured presentations around SMART goal setting? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Great if you're running a factory and the work is formulaic with predictable outcomes, but in research it doesn't quite work so well. And so part of what can happen if we, and this is what, see, this model here is, with this picture is my interpretation of what academics call constructive discontent. It's a great term, constructive discontent. It's about recognizing that there's a discrepancy between where you are and where you want things to be, right? Here's where you are now. Where you want things to be is thesis submitted or research submitted or things moving along, and that there's a gap between the two states. A lot of the management world focus on the end state, and a lot of the classic motivational stuff focuses on the internal state, like going into the heads and hearts of where you are now. I should just finish off this internal stuff first before we get into it. This is just framing so you know what we're doing here. I'm making it terribly hard for the camera person. Sorry, I'm pacing all over the place. But the internal stuff, it can be really, really good. And something worth considering is these resources that you have here, the ability to have good conversations. So I might almost call it coaching, because it can be transformational if someone knows what they're doing. It takes a lot of sophistication. I'm not talking about people who decide overnight to become a life coach and then go out and print business cards that have a butterfly on it, because butterflies symbolize transformation and that's what they're all about, and purple combining blue, logic, and red for passion, and it all just becomes... Anyway, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually people that maybe have been there before, who can ask the right questions that can provide insight into what's going on. That can be transformational. But a lot of this stuff doesn't scale beyond one-on-one. So the changing attitudes, beliefs, changing people, it's a tricky game. I was at a conference about 2 years ago now, and there was this lady, I was at the back doing my introverted thing on my iPad, and there was this lady saying, "Did you know that the bumblebee is apparently so heavy that according to the laws of aerodynamics it should not be able to fly?" Well, you know what? No one told the bumblebee, okay? No one told the bumblebee. And people are going to tell you that you can't fly. Well, I say, you just let your wings shine, okay? You just let your wings shine. And there was a lady next to me, and she was writing in a notebook, "Let wings shine." And she underlined "shine" 3 times, and so it was going to be useful future reference when motivation was low. I looked at my iPad, I googled up bumblebees' flight, and it turns out that, according to science, that bumblebees' wings create mini cyclones which help keep them aloft, which is really fascinating. It's worthy of further curiosity. Like the opportunity we have is if the motivation's not there, or the desired behaviours, such as doing more writing, making more progress in your research, all that stuff, if they aren't manifesting, then rather than defaulting to this internal stuff and believe that it's an issue with your motivation and that there's something wrong with you, that's not very helpful. That's not actually correct in many cases. Instead, the opportunity we have is to get curious as to what's going on. Like, what is going on in this bigger thing? How can we actually change what's going on potentially in the middle bit here so that it becomes more inherently motivating? But if we're not doing internal stuff, then we default to the classic extrinsic stuff of setting goals. Well, that's at least what the advice we get a lot is. And this was a big part of my PhD. I studied motivational interventions to sustain behaviour, to sustain different behaviours. My research was funded by healthy aging grants, so a lot of people I worked with were people aged between 55 to 75 who had goals but wanted to sustain their efforts towards achieving them. And smart goal setting, if you're trying to explore stuff, if you're trying to do work that's unprecedented, pioneering work in unprecedented territory, what a smart goal can do is essentially distort your behaviour and cut yourself off from the ability to innovate or adapt along the way. And so, think about a context where, if you think about the dynamics that you want, like this has a big implication when we're talking about teams. If you think of a school environment, like think about maybe you're within your particular school discipline, you've got a set of lecturers who work together, they share their resources, they collaborate, they get their timetables sorted out so that students aren't bombarded with assignments all around the same time. The students love showing up to their classes, they love learning. The teachers, the lecturers are actually a little bit risky, and sometimes they do some innovative things. And then a new dean comes along, some young, new to the role, whatever, but they have great intentions and they see what's going on here and they think, I want more of this. And so they say, I tell you what, the top 10% of you teachers, depending on student feedback and the gradings and stuff, we're going to give you a $10,000 bonus this year, the top 10% within the school. Now that's lovely. Wow, what a great what a great extrinsic thing that's been dropped into the game at play. But what do you think might happen to the naturally collaborative behaviours that were there if only 10% can get $10,000 bonus? They may collapse into something more competitive. What might happen to those behaviours that we're much more inclined to explore, to take a few calculated risks to innovate in the classroom? They might collapse back into what people think the dean is actually looking for. And so the result of this SMART goal, a well-intended motivational intervention and reinforced or enhanced with some sort of reward, is that you get all sorts of behavioural distortion. People start, the intention was, let's enhance this collaboration and creativity. The result is you get enhanced competition and conformity. And so we need to be really, really careful with what type of motivational interventions we bring into this game that you're playing right now, which is research, which is incredibly non-linear, fraught with failure, and a lot of hard work. And so let's have a look at this model. We got the internal stuff here, we got the extrinsic stuff here. There is a big gap between the two things. Now, Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian. He was once rumoured to have been paid $60,000 to speak for 5 minutes in his local city. From a conference organiser's perspective, it kind of makes sense because you put Jerry Seinfeld on the program, or people register and apply, you get better sponsors and all that, so that's all fine. He wasn't the only speaker, there was lots of speakers there, and they're all sitting much like you were, and Jerry was introduced to share his secrets to success. So Jerry Seinfeld comes up, ladies and gentlemen, introducing Jerry Seinfeld here to share his secrets to success. He had 5 minutes, he comes up, lots of applause, he waves, there was a flip chart up on stage, the centre stage, he took out a pen, he wrote 3 words, put the pen down, nodded, and then he buggered off. And for the next 4 minutes and 50 seconds, people stared at these 3 words, Jerry Seinfeld's secret to success, which I quite like. Many people find it a little bit anticlimactic, but the 3 words were, do the work. And for those hoping for, there was this book, The Secret, which was essentially that visualize as you actualize and things like that. If they were hoping for the secret version 2.0, they might have been disappointed. I find this to be really remarkable, this whole concept of doing the work. See, this gap between where you are and where you want things to be is, we're all on the wrong side of a whole heap of good work. And any type of development, any growth, any forward movement happens when we actually do the work. This whole gap between where we are and where we want things to be is filled with work. And so the opportunity we have is we can redesign this work to make this work better. Of course, back when I was doing my PhD, I was lecturing at 3 universities. I was teaching students about motivational stuff. I also worked in some high schools, and I was doing classic motivational speaker stuff back then. I was talking about Roger Bannister and the 4-minute mile and all the other standard throwaway things. And I had goals in my own world. I had finance goals, I had thesis writing goals, I had fitness goals because I was putting on half a kilo a month because of the amount of time spent sitting behind my laptop, pseudo-working. But I still felt, I felt like, here I am, I'm doing this research, I'm at the cutting edge of literature, I'm lecturing in motivation science, I was working in high schools and stuff, helping students learn how to stay motivated towards exams and all that, and yet I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft, which is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. It was when it first came out, and I was it's just the first expansion, so I was a level 40 Blood Elf rogue, rogues are the sneaky types that disarm traps and pick locks and stuff like that. And I was part of a big guild of lots of players from around the world. There's about 300 of us in this guild, and I was equal second in command. I was the guild alchemist, so my job was to make potions for the guild. People would go out on quests, bring me back ingredients, and I'd turn them into wonderful potions to help them go on even better quests. Health potions, mana potions, stamina potions, potions of invisibility, potions of speed, potions of stamina, potions of invulnerability, potions of endurability, potions of fire breathing, fire resistance, fire walking, you name it. Pretty much I was like Breaking Bad in this game. I was the one who knocks. And I got a lot of respect, from the guild. Probably a lot of 13-year-old boys and sad old men. But for 3 months, I was playing this game at the exclusion of all other meaningful projects that I had going on in my world. Despite having SMART goals, despite doing all the right things when it came to thesis writing and all these other things, I was playing this game, and then when I wasn't playing this game, I was defaulting to bloody essay marking because I was tutoring in a whole heap of units. Has anyone done that? They seem to have accumulated a lot of teaching stuff. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? And then when it wasn't, I wasn't playing this game or defaulting that, then the very little time I had left, I was really to confront the vagaries and uncertainties of progressing this research stuff. It took 3 months of me playing this game hard. Like I would say to people, all right, guys, I'm off to work, and people would say to me, Jace, you're working so hard and stuff, you should take it easy, have a break. But they didn't realise that I'd go into my office and close the blinds and log into Azeroth and go on quests and stuff like that instead of actually doing my work. It was only when I was moving house and I lost my internet connection for a while that I realised something was going on here. Somehow this game had displaced all the motivational constructs that I had in my world to progress the important stuff. And instead I was investing my time and my behaviours were defaulting to making progress within this game. And that struck me as really curious. I thought, there's something going on here, something about game design. There's some sort of sophisticated motivational design elements within games that possibly we can extract and combine with what we know with motivation science and apply it to shift behaviours towards more meaningful stuff in the real world. And that's essentially what I hope to share with you a little bit today, how we can start to add some insights from game design to change the game that you're playing to make it more inherently motivating, so that when you wake up, you actually want to progress your thesis or your research, and you want to take further steps into the uncertain territory that is research. So hopefully we can unpack that. It's really, if we were to look at the three things on the very left-hand side, we're talking about internal motivational drivers, very, very complex. It requires a lot of sophistication. On the right-hand side, we're talking about extrinsic elements, extrinsic rewards, which are fine in the short term for simple tasks. They don't really work so well for the complexity of research. What we've got in the middle here is how do we actually make this process inherently motivating, which I think offers some good insight for us. So this isn't just some crazy research that I came up with myself. There's some great research that's out there asking the question, how do we get people enthusiastic about doing work? So this might very much be asked from a supervisor's perspective, how do we actually get our research students enthusiastic about doing work? This is a big piece of research. What we have here is we're actually asking managers. They asked over 600 managers from different industries at different levels, what is it that gets people enthusiastic about doing work? All of the answers here are good answers. They've been distilled down from various meta-analyses, so they're all very good. What I'd like you to do is part two of interactive activities. This is very easy. I'd just like you to mumble to your BFF next to you what you think the correct answer might be out of all these choices that gets people enthusiastic about doing work. And so the intention they had around this is what actually sustains enthusiasm around doing work. I'd like you to mumble to the person next to you what you think the correct... Don't say it too clearly in case you get it wrong, but just mumble what you think it might be. You can tell, this is great. This is again a wonderful example of researchers. Normal folk would have a stab at one of the answers, and say it with a sense of certainty and nod their head at the end. I'm sure many of you had said, well, it really depends, and you tried to unpack different contexts and stuff like that, which is great. The number one thing is recognition for good work. And it's a really, really good answer. It means that when good work happens, when good things are done, that it doesn't just disappear into a void, that it's actually noticed and celebrated. It's a good answer. But what the researchers thought might be novel is, why don't we actually ask the employees themselves? And rather than just asking those 600 managers, why don't we actually follow a bunch of employees over several years, analysing what's going on in their inner work life to see what correlates to the highest levels of motivation in their work. Turns out what came out as number one for them is what the managers ranked dead last. And that is a clear sense of progress. A sense of progress. This then became the number one breakthrough idea from the Harvard Business Review in 2010. It's called the Progress Principle. It's researched by Professor Teresa Amabile and Professor Stephen Kramer. And it's really, really fascinating. It starts to flip on its head this whole notion of setting goals or visualizing success and all that, or trying to get yourself motivated, but it then opens up an opportunity is, well, how do we actually start to see progress in the work we do? Because a sense of progress is really about reducing the latency between effort and meaningful feedback. The more these feedback loops are short-circuited, the more likely you are to put effort into things. Now, let me present to you two relatable scenarios. Scenario number one, your supervisor, who you love and we have immense gratitude for, and they're wonderful people, and we're very honoured that we get an opportunity to do research with them, and etc., etc. They say to you something like, I think we should research this, and I really think you need to put some effort into this. And so off you go and you do that, and you put a lot of effort into this, and then a month later you come back and you present the culmination of a lot of late nights and angst and all that, and they flick through it and they say, I'm not sure if we really need this actually. And what we learn in that moment is that should similar requests occur again, and this happens in a work environment again, it's much more likely that we'll default to a conservative level of effort. And this can happen perpetually throughout our PhD or research, is that we hear these requests, but because we're not sure, and it's the nature of the progressing through uncharted territory, because we're not sure if they're actually going to go anywhere or they will contribute to a sense of progress, we have a conservative level of effort that we invest into it. It's like an intelligent form of laziness. We all have a finite amount of time and energy available to us each day. We're more likely to invest it into things that we know are going to contribute towards a clear sense of progress. Now let's think about it on the other side, because you can relate, like in a normal work environment, a boss says to you, I need this on my desk by Monday. You go do the work, and Monday comes, and the boss says, actually I'm not sure if we need that anymore. Then you learn the same thing. Should similar requests happen again, then it's more likely we default to a more conservative level of effort. Companies that are moving through change can have whole teams that are just coasting below the radar. And classically, they'd be told to have, potentially a low level of motivation, when really what's going on is they're conserving the effort, energy, and attention they have and directing it towards the activities and things that provide a richer sense of progress. This is exactly what happens in our work, because you might have these poster sessions that are coming up that you're going to see. You might see a poster from... I had this situation in my research where it was the third year of my PhD. I was in a conference overseas. I had a poster presentation. I was really excited and stuff like that. It's the whole poster defense thing. I just did my introvert. I've got all sorts of strategies for avoiding networking at events like conference events. So one of the good ones, here's a tip, is if you walk around as though you're on a mission, no one will bother you and you won't have to speak to anyone. So I may have had a poster and I may have kind of ghosted or just been on the periphery pretending that I was looking at my own poster and saying, that's good research, yes. But say that you go to this thing that's coming up, the poster sharing of the 3-minute thesis, and you see there's some great ideas here that, from a different discipline, different school or whatever, but could actually add to the research that you're doing. And it's fascinating, and that's the type of outcome we get from these events. And you've got this whole new field of inquiry that you could pursue that could enhance the research that you do. You've got some notes in your book and it's really exciting. The next morning you go to start to progress this and you sit down, here's your desk, and what do you find yourself doing? Many of us will find ourselves checking email because email provides such a rich sense of progress compared to progressing the uncertainties of a new field of research. You know, you may have 98 emails in your inbox, an hour later you've only got 64. It feels like you're winning, right? You're making progress, yeah? And this is what happens. Our activities will default to environments that provide the richest sense of progress. Think about most of your types of procrastination. Other than Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and all the other things that provide you a constant feed of new information, other activities, sorry, I'm just going to stand up again. I'm watching the camera's kind of tilt up and down every time I'm so sorry. You know, there are other forms of procrastination. Like I had this thing going on in my office for a while where I geometrically align everything, and actually this chair is pretty good. You know, you can do these activities and get a clear sense of progress immediately. Ooh. Which is satisfying. I know other people, you know, they do cleaning or they do other tasks, or they do they default to the more mindless or the more the busy work, essentially, that dupes you into feeling a sense of progress. I have a friend who procrastinates, so she'll bake stuff in the oven at home because she can watch the progress of it, and then then she goes and shares it with people, like cupcakes and stuff like that. She gets the good feedback, look at, you're so good and it's lovely, what a great person. I know that many of us, when it comes to writing lists, will write down things that we've already done just so that we can tick them off and get a sense of progress. We love this stuff. We love seeing progress. And when it comes to research, this is one of the biggest opportunities we have. How do we visualize progress in the stuff that matters? One of the key outcomes from this research, this breakthrough idea from the Harvard Business Review, is that staying motivated is less about setting big distilled goals into the future or visualizing what the future may look like and all that stuff, but it's more about how do we celebrate small wins at a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly level. How do we celebrate these small wins? What you're a part of right now is a little bit of a ritual around this. These 3-minute theses, the posters, is a culmination. It is like a celebration of the research, a snapshot of where things are. And the more small wins that we can find in our work, the more likely we are to be perpetuated to produce similar small wins. One of the key things I'm going to share with you, and I'll probably spend a good bit of time in this and we'll get a little bit interactive, are some of the structures and rituals that you can use in your research that may help you to generate more small wins or a sense of progress to keep you propelled to keep investing effort into the stuff that matters. This progress principle is really, really important. I hope it's a key thing that you can take away from this. But I talked a little bit about games before. And I want to give you guys, because just like motivation, games have their own baggage attached to it. Who here plays, it's fascinating though, right? Who here plays Tetris? Yeah, cool. Who here is really good at Tetris? Yeah, that's great. No, I actually mean it. So Tetris though, even ninjas, even absolute masters at Tetris, if you're playing the classic version, Tetris is a game in which you're pretty much guaranteed to fail. This is the bricks coming down and eventually gets to the point where you'll fail. And yet, what they've found with video gamers is that they'll often spend 80 to 90% of their time failing in a game. But because the feedback loops are so tight, they get the opportunity to learn and to keep into this. Now, in research, one of the biggest things is that the pathway, like if it's anything like my thesis, it's about 2 years of making a whole heap of really stupid mistakes in hindsight, and then 1 year of kind of trying to make it seem like that was intended all along. As part of like this coherent thesis that you put together. And then when you get to that final year, you look back upon your first couple of years and you think, what a holiday that was, that time there. Then you bloody get your thesis submitted, and then you think back on your whole PhD with fondness. What a wonderful time that was, because postgrad it gets even more challenging. There's a thing going on here, and this is, I'll have to draw this one up because I don't have the slides here. There's a model by a guy called Mile Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote the book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, in which, and I'm going to do a very simplified version here, in which he contrasts challenge with skill. And he argues that if you get the balance right, and hopefully you guys can see that too, if you get the balance right, you get this flow channel here, where if you're working in this space where you get the right balance between challenge and skill, you have blissful productivity. The task becomes autotelic. It's kind of like where you have those late nights and you just stumble. I don't know, if you stumble across one gold research paper, which is just brilliant, then you scroll down to the references and you see that links to another dozen or so papers that you think, this is brilliant for my literature review and stuff like that. So you suddenly hit that spot, but it only comes after a lot of angst that you've been spending the time. If your skill level is really high compared to the challenge that you have, what we often experience is some sort of disengagement. It might be boredom, it might be you're just not inspired because the challenge isn't there, it feels mundane. But what we have up here is the challenge is too high and we're not into flow, is we have anxiety. And this is a state that many of us occupy when it comes to research work. It's a good state to be in because we are actually challenging ourselves, we're outside of our comfort zone, and this is where a lot of learning happens. But it's also a state which can open up the doors to, and I'm going to shuffle my presentation order a little bit here because I think this is important now. This is the territory for self-sabotage. If we're working in a space outside of our comfort zone, high level of challenge relative to the skill that we have, occasionally we might drop into moments of flow, but a lot of the time is punctuated by moments of anxiety. And the typical behaviours that we have as, in this space is we try to bring a sense of progress into this space. Instead of actually tackling the real work, what we do is we say yes to taking on that tutoring thing because you get the instant gratification of more income coming in, which is fantastic. And then even marking assignments, as torturous as that process can be, you still get that sense of progress, you're doing good work, you're moving through the assignments, you just marked 200 assignments or whatever it is, and it's great, but it doesn't do anything to help with the anxiety of your bigger game. The most important thing is progressing the research that you have. So this anxiety perpetuates, and what it manifests as is self-sabotage. Now, I heard this wonderful story regarding self-sabotage from a couple of professors in Adelaide University, and it's a story of this French chess player. Can anyone here do a French laugh? Probably some people can, but we're introverted, so yeah. Anyway, I can't really do the French accent very well, but I'm so good at chess. Just imagine like a guy with a curly mustache and a beret and a striped shirt and a French stick and, cigarette on a stick. And anyway, there's a French person, very good at chess. He was world famous because he would win almost all of the games of chess that he played, and he would start with one less piece. He'd have one of the pawns removed, P-A-W-N. And he would win most of these games. But the few games that he lost, what do you think he was able to say? Yeah, you didn't really beat me. This was a real game. Of course I would have won. It's only because I had one less piece. He had an inbuilt alibi that excused himself from poorer performance. And this is what happens perpetually for us. Now, the alibi might actually be grounded in a lot of reality, but we need to be really savvy about this because this is what self-sabotage is. Now, I'm going to hopefully pivot this so everyone can see. Right now, I'm going to call this reality in inverted commas. You're experiencing reality primarily at the moment through sound waves that are bouncing off the walls, stimulating the cilia in your ears, being turned into a chemical electrical signal which your brain is processing as meaning, same with the light waves. So essentially sitting in a sea of atoms and energy which you're making mean stuff. Now, this can be, it's amazing how quickly you guys grasp that, whereas most people don't. This can be a negative perception that you create, or it could be positive. I'm loath to create dualistic things here because it's much more complex than that, but just bear with me. And then somehow there's this story that we have, that we make, that is the meaning that we make out of the reality. Sometimes with like a PhD, with this anxiety space, you could actually put yourself as the hero. And if we actually remember the purpose piece that Ursula was talking about beforehand, realizing the work that you're doing, the actual importance that it has in the bigger context of humanity, that is a good space to be in. But when we have, when it's 2 years in and you've got key things to do, you've just realised that the instrument that you've been using to measure behaviours is not actually validated, you thought it was, and your statistics are all completely out of whack, and in fact you don't have any idea, and it's becoming quickly clear that your supervisor, who you once put on a pedestal, is equally in a vague space about this. It's possible that we can create self-sabotaging behaviours in this negative space. Well, in this less positive, less useful space. And so some of the things that we do, and remember that all self-sabotaging behaviours are us subconsciously creating alibis that excuse ourselves from poorer performance. Some of these things might be things like, just go a couple of pages, things like, let's go with the classic procrastination. I think in the world, people think they can procrastinate. No one can procrastinate as well as a researcher. I think we do it the best out of everyone. The story is often, I work better when I'm under pressure, and sometimes we have evidence to support this story. Like, we have precedents in which, yes, we've left things to the last minute. We've cracked that lit review in only a week when we had been given 3 months to do it, and it worked well. Or we got that grant proposal written up in just a couple of nights, and we got the grant. So we got evidence to support this. The alibi is, well, you imagine a situation where you do leave things to the last minute, and then the disk file corrupts and there was no saved backup, or you get a migraine and you can't actually complete the work. All of these things can happen. The risk goes up, and then if they were to happen, you can say, oh, well, if it wasn't for that disk file corrupting, or if it wasn't for that migraine, of course this would have been okay. We, unbeknownst to ourselves, we don't do this deliberately, but we create a scenario where we have an inbuilt alibi that excuses ourselves from poorer performance. Who here can relate to perfectionism? Put up your hand. Oh, yeah, that's okay, good. In my world, perfectionism. In my world, I'm a massive procrastination, so I'll take the best of procrastination and perfectionism and combine them to get nothing done. In my world, this looks like the first 6 months of my PhD playing with formatting, making sure I was getting the font right font, all the, should I go with 1.5 line spacing or 2? I know 2 is probably easier to mark, and then makes it bulkier and stuff like that, and anyway, yes, there's things here, and often what happens is perfectionists will say, I just didn't have enough time, because they front-loaded it with a lot of unnecessary insecurity work rather than progressing the important stuff. We've also got being busy, where sometimes people are too busy to make progress on the stuff that matters. This is where you find yourself perpetually checking email. This is where you find yourself answering student emails with dumb questions. Oh, no, sorry, that's not correct. Student emails with questions that could actually be handled in the tutorial classroom, where instead you find yourself pouring half an hour into answering those emails instead of working on your research work. We feel important. We feel very important. This is the same overarching thing. You may be working, and you may know that you need uninterrupted time to get good work done on your thesis, and yet you've got your phone next to you, and as soon as a text message or a new email comes in, it disrupts you, and it takes you a good 12 minutes to get back into the work that you were doing, but you're feeling important. And so that's one thing that we've got there. There's a lot more than this. I'll just give the final one. No, the final one that I'll put up here, there's a lot more. It's probably the most noble form of self-sabotage, and this is overcommitment. I think I spelt it wrong, but I'm not in perfectionist mode at the moment. Overcommitment. This is where you are doing so many things that should you not succeed in any one particular thing, like submitting your chapter for review to your supervisor, you can say, well, what do you expect? I'm on the board for this thing here, I'm helping out with these research papers, I'm teaching these 3 units, they've all got assignments due at the moment, and you can present a very legitimate case for why you haven't actually progressed your A game, because you've got all these other things going on here. It's very noble. You look at you, oh, the champion, you're doing so many, you're martyring yourself for the greater good here. But not for the greater good of your research or your thesis. And so this is really interesting. And so part of the whole thing and part of the precursor to the game stuff I want to share here is for you to look at this stuff, and we're going to do a little activity, then I'm going to get you to talk to the person next to you again. And this is an introverted activity just to start with. So what I'd like you to do is just right now, I'd like you to think about what you're thinking about right now. Stay with me in the moment, but think about what you're thinking about. If you've done mindfulness training or you've tried to cleanse your mind with meditation, sorry, this is the opposite. This is bringing more thoughts in. But think about what you're thinking about. Now, I'd like you to see yourself thinking about what you're thinking about, okay? So imagine you can see yourself sitting in this room thinking about what you're thinking about while you're with me in this moment. So you're essentially entering a state of doubly dissociated metacognition, okay? Now I'd like you to imagine that the real you is currently at home playing the current you as part of a massively multiplayer real-world role-playing game, okay? So don't have to think anymore. Has anyone seen the movie Avatar? Yeah, so the real you is there, and this is your avatar. You're surrounded by other avatars here, and the part of the game you're playing is progressing great research. From that perspective, from you, doubly dissociated, looking and thinking about what's going on in your world, I'd like you to reflect and have a chat to your BFF about some of the things that might be going on here. I'm going to cover this sheet up because I want you to think about it in your world, some of the self-sabotage behaviours that might be going on when it comes to you and your thesis. What's going on here that you can sometimes, from this perspective of doubly dissociated metacognition, you can see yourself doing. Like, what are some of the things? I used to have this thing going on with M&Ms. There was a vending machine near my PhD office that had different M&Ms, and I create little reward structures for me to actually progress the work. But eventually it became about how do I align the M&Ms and different things, and then I was just eating M&Ms and not getting work done and then playing World of Warcraft. There's different things that we have going on that we're all profoundly adept at getting in our own way. We are all profoundly adept at getting in our own way. And part of where I want to get to is for you to make it hard for yourself. So, with that in mind, what are some of the self-sabotage activities that you've got going on that you suspect might be operating beneath the radar that we can draw some visibility to? I'd like you, and everyone does this, and it's a very human thing, like no matter what level, no matter what position that people have various levels of mastering it, but we all do it. I'd like you to chat with your BFF next to you. What's some of the things going on in your world? I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to do this. Let's go. And magic. All right. So we all sometimes we have sophisticated strategies that are quite marvelous. And I know that sometimes when I share mine, and I saw a few people sharing their self-sabotage strategies with a little bit of pride at just how intelligent they were or how sophisticated they were. Part of the solution to managing self-sabotage or reversing self-sabotage is to create visibility around this stuff, to just be conscious of it, to be aware of it, and then to make it hard for yourselves. Sabotage is a really interesting concept. When we look at saboteurs in an army context or things, they're the ones that cut off the supply lines or disrupt communications and essentially hobble the ability for the opposing force to progress. And it's kind of what we do in our own worlds. I'm going to switch to game design as a lens because when we start to see these things through the lens of game design, some tweaks can be made that may help us to limit the amount of self-sabotage we do and enhance the progress that we make. Games are interesting. Games have their own kind of language baggage around it. If someone says to you, don't play games with me, it means that you're potentially trying to manipulate them. which is kind of what games are. Games are a set of parameters designed to manipulate and influence human behaviour. There's this thing called sport, which I've read a lot about, that has this thing. I lived right opposite the MCG, and my friends made me go to watch a football game, in which you look at most of the people playing this game, and they don't look like they're having a lot of fun. Like, they're just either they're huffing and puffing, and as soon as they step onto this boundary thing, the whole set of different rules and parameters apply, and they're suddenly motivated to move this red object through a set of posts, risking life and limb to do so in order to get a sense of progress in the form of points. And they'll keep doing that and be very motivated to that, and people love watching this stuff as well. And when we're not watching sports shows, we love watching, well, a lot of people seem to love watching reality TV shows. I kind of like Iron Chef. Do you guys see that with the chairman, the Japanese guy? Yeah, it's a yellow capsicum. We love games, and so when I started to notice this phenomenon in my PhD of me playing a lot of World of Warcraft instead of doing other things that I had goals and all the right constructs for, I got really curious, and I shared this with the academics and around me and my supervisors, but they harumphed and they said, games are just what people do to avoid work. And it could be that they actually did me a big favour there, because it's very easy to go on tangents when you've got a thesis and research to do, so that was actually quite helpful. But I got curious at this concept, because a lot of people dismiss games. They say, people just play them to avoid work. Whereas if you... has anyone here played golf? Yeah, a couple? Yeah, cool. All right, cool. Nice. Yeah, good. I don't play golf because I'm a redhead and the sun is my arch nemesis. And so I like to stay in I play mini golf. But anyway, look at the game of golf, right? The goal is to get the ball in the hole in the least number of shots. Now, if we were an efficiency expert, and if an efficiency expert tried to tell you how to do your PhD more effectively or how to do your research or postgrad more effectively, chances are the advice wouldn't work. And same as this game of golf. Like if we were an efficiency expert, we could just say, look guys, why don't you take the ball and take your shot from here, and then you get the ball in the hole with much less effort, enhancing your return on effort and the efficiency and all the other parameters here, and you can essentially win the game of golf. And if you had a drill, you could drill a hole in your desk and drop the ball in the hole every time you wanted to win the game of golf, and you'd be winning. It'd be great. Smarts and game. You could create circular tubes and then have, a ball running through them and win multiple games of golf all the time, even while you're asleep. Except games don't work like that. They have rules that make it difficult. And when we look at what makes up a lot of work, what makes up a lot of games, is a lot of challenging work. People don't play games to avoid work, they play games to engage in well-designed work. And so hence, there's the opportunity we have. Because the three ingredients of games, all games, board games, sports games, video games, are simply goals, rules, and feedback. The interplay of goals, rules, and feedback. A good game is a goal-driven, challenge-intense, and feedback-rich experience geared towards making progress. Just because it's a game doesn't mean it's good, though. There are plenty of games where the goals are really fuzzy, and that's fine, but the sense of purpose hasn't really been connected yet. People don't really understand the meaning of what they're doing. There are games where the rules are getting in the way of actual progress. The rules were created in another time to serve a different need. I remember once when I completed my thesis, my university at the time had this scholarship. I wasn't ready to enter the real world, you see. So there was this scholarship for converting your thesis into, getting it written up and converted into a book. The intention of the scholarship was, we want your research to get out there, we want people to access this stuff. And so the scholarship worked, I think it was $6,000 or something. And I discovered that there was a company that helped to produce it as an ebook and distribute it widely, globally, instead of being a book and just being on a few shelves there. I went into contracts with them, I converted it, got it into an EPUB format and all that stuff. And then a month later, I was talking about the office, and I realised that my scholarship would be cut off after the first month. They only pay per month, $1,000 per month, because I would have achieved that. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I just put the brakes on a lot of these things. I slowed the progress down, and I ensured that it took 6 months for this research to get out to the people, because otherwise the rules would dictate that I'd miss out on the rest of the scholarship. And so sometimes the work that we do, the games that we play, have these types of rules that were created in one context but no longer serve. And other times there's not enough rules. We have no idea about what we can and cannot do, and therefore we're paralysed by uncertainty about how we can progress. And so the rules can be incredibly empowering. And of course, the feedback, in many contexts with the games that we play, feedback is non-existent, or it's in a format that's not necessarily useful. So this might be where you're getting purely quantitative feedback when what you need is more qualitative stuff. Or you're getting qualitative stuff and it might be useful to actually see this visualised in a quantified way. How far we progress? What's the percentage of completion that we've got? And so when we look at this formula, goals, rules, feedback, we can see that life consists of many different games that we play. Any project that you've done before has an objective, a goal. There are rules to follow. That you have this many resources, this much time in order to do it. There's feedback. Are we hitting our milestones? Are we making progress? A research project has a hypothesis or a question or a statement, something that needs to be researched. There are rules. It ultimately needs to end up in some sort of publication, something that people can access and read it, and it might have a particular format that you need to do. You might be doing a thesis by publication, or you might be doing a more classic thesis, or it might be in another format, but it has some rules around it. And there's feedback along the way. The feedback's probably the fuzziest bit when it comes to this research thing. How often are you meeting with your supervisor? What are the meaningful measures? And you might need to build this along as you go. But it is a game. I've been, Jamie Oliver, the cook, the chef guy. I've got his book, The 30-Minute Meals, which is a fantastic book. It's got like all these recipes for doing dinner parties and stuff. So my goal with that book is to cook it in under an hour and 15 minutes. The rules are, there's a sequence of ingredients to follow and here's the steps, and the feedback is, was it a good meal? And you can actually look at life, you can see a whole heap of things. If you've ever made a cup of tea, read a book, rode a bicycle to work, all of these things are games. Sometimes I have people come up to me and they say, oh, that's fine, Jason, but I don't play games whatsoever. Like, I just don't play any games at all. Even if you garden, you're playing a game. If you've got a garden, you might have this goal of one day cooking food for people using fresh produce, seasonal produce from your garden, inviting some friends over and cooking that meal. The rules are, well, cool, some plants can only be planted in a particular season and they need a certain soil type and a certain amount of water and so on. And the feedback is, are there weeds in your garden? Are the plants alive? Are they thriving? What's going on here? So gardening can very much be seen to be a game. You don't have to fully embrace this, but what I'm suggesting is there's a lens that we can apply here. When we look at what's going on in your world, if something's not working, we can start to change the game to make it work better. We can get our head in the game, we can lift our game, we can change the game to make it work better. Your thesis is a game, your research is a game. The work that you're doing at university here can be seen through the lens of game design. But it could be that one of these elements, goals, rules, feedback, need a little bit of tweaking to make it work a little bit better for you. The thing is, you're not the issue. It's not you. Don't worry about your motivation. Apply what you do have to the game itself. You're not broken. Possibly some elements of the game are that we can tweak and make work better. All of these things here, if you've watched TED.com, there's a great presentation by Dan Pink. He's wrote the book called Drive, The Surprising Science of What Motivates Us, and he has a TED presentation of a similar title. He says that 3 modern elements of intrinsic motivation are purpose, mastery, and autonomy, which correlate beautifully with game design. The structures, the focus, the lens that we can apply to these things when we start to see our work through the lens of game design means that we don't lose the bigger sense of purpose, what Ursula shared this morning, in amongst the work. Even when we're getting in amongst the nitty-gritty, we have that in context. It ensures that, that mastery is here. This model here, the flow model, the Marines, when they first came to Okinawa in Japan, they wanted to do black belt stuff. They saw black belt martial artists and they thought, that is cool. And they tried to do it and they hurt themselves. And at the time in Japan, there were only 2 belts, white belt and black belt. You'd spend decades in white belt, then you become black belt after a lot of hard work. The Marines didn't want to spend decades, so what they created is a belt system that helped them to divide the challenge and focus on the right thing at the right time. White, yellow, green, blue, red, black belt. And so what it meant is They'd have the appropriate challenge to the level of skill that they had, and they'll essentially level up like that. There are rules in place that help them to develop mastery. There's some sort of scaffolding like that you might be able to work into your research, that you might be able to work with your supervisor to do. There are rituals that you can create that can enhance the feedback that you have, short-circuit those feedback cycles so you feel more empowered to make more choices about how you go about the methodology of your research. All this stuff works beautifully together. And let me show you this wonderful model. This is really cool. Then I want to get into conversation about structures and rewards and things like that. 3 levels of engagement. We've got challenge, which I've already talked about. Let's call this stimulation, which is up there on the board as well. And let's call this reward, which could be personal internal rewards. Just check this out, what I'm about to do here. You see, if you have stimulation reward, and it's challenge. If you have challenge and stimulation, but no reward, what you're going to get here is you can potentially get burnt out. If it's not internally rewarding for you, or you're not getting financially compensated, you can do lots of challenging, stimulating work, but eventually you'll get burnt out. If you have stimulation and reward, but no challenge, you're going to feel like your skills are getting blunted. A lot of people leave their work because they desire a new challenge. They feel, this is just blunt. And then if there's no stimulation, you're going to get bored. So to avoid getting bored, burnt, or blunt, we need to have this overlap between challenge, stimulation, and reward. Now check this out, right? Part of that is by doing this. Yeah? That says end, by the way. It's the last 3 letters of challenge, stimulation, reward. End. We need to get very good at crafting endpoints in the work that we do. So one of the biggest challenges about research is that it has a very, very distant deadline and then a whole heap of fuzziness in between. And it can feel like it's ongoing, infinite work. Sometimes we need to create endpoints, like little milestones, mini milestones that we can work towards to get a sense of progress. I'll explain what I mean by that. I think I've got a slide for that actually, because it relates to a theory of fun. Academics tend to default to very phallic definitions, I've found, which is part of the whole isolated nature of research. There's big data, hard data, throbbing data, and just like that, there are 2 definitions for fun: hard fun and soft fun. This illustrates hard fun, which essentially is tension plus release. It's like that time where you go out with your partner's, workmates, and you share your most favourite politically incorrect joke, and there's that awkward moment where they don't laugh, and then they do. That's fun. Tension plus release. Soft fun is just where you go to the movies, you catch up with friends, you're chatting and stuff, and that's lovely. Hard fun is essentially a whole heap of hard work, just like Thomas Edison said, genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, but the hard work is punctuated with these moments of release. And so instead of treating your research as this big infinite marathon, you can actually see it as a series of progressive little sprints, where you can sprint around to do a little bit of work, pause, release, reflect, and then do another sprint. And so, 2 models I want to share. One very quick one for you, and then let's get into the structures and rituals things. This is a model by B.J. Fogg's. He's a professor at Stanford University. It's called the behavior model, and you can look up more of this stuff, behaviormodel.org. If you Google it up, behaviormodel.org. He essentially has motivation on one side, very, very fuzzy concept, but high at the top point and low at the bottom point. And then we have ability, stuff that's really, really hard to do here and stuff that's easy to do this way. He argues if for any particular behavior, we need 3 things. We need motivation plus the ability plus a trigger. Triggers can either land above or below this activation threshold. A trigger is an email, it's a deadline, it's a conversation, it's a poster that you see, it's a reminder, it's an ad, it's anything that could be a precursor to action. Now, triggers will work if they fall above the activation threshold, they'll fail if they fall below it. So you might have the motivation to do your thesis. Now, I've added another layer to this, so let's go with the quadrant view. You might be like up in this space up here. You're highly motivated, but the stuff is incredibly difficult. This passion that you have is often how we start, and it usually ends up with us feeling a little bit burnt out. This space up here, the triggers are going to succeed here, but it's really, really hard to get these 2 points. Most of us are in this area where triggers might work, but they might also fail. And part of the key model for this, part of the key premise of this model is we need to design for low motivation. We need to almost expect that most people are going to be operating at a low level of motivation most of the time. And so if we want any wins when it comes to converted behaviours, the biggest wins we're going to have is around making stuff that's easier to do. How this translates in your world is instead of setting yourself a goal to say, I'm going to write 10,000 words with my thesis this fortnight, a better thing would be to say, there's this website called 750words.com, 750words.com, which essentially tracks your writing. And it might be that you want to get in a rhythm of writing 750 words a day. And then once you've got that done, you might want to up that to 1,500 words. If quantity is where you're at with your thesis, then that might be it. In other areas, it might be about finding a certain number of quality references or resources or things like that. You need to just find what are the small wins that we can actually do each day rather than focusing on the bigger ones. A useful framework for this is to almost, I left it out. It's almost, I saw this webcomic where there is this guy who is lazing about on a couch looking completely lazy, and the thought bubble says, I'm not lazy, I'm 100% motivated to do nothing. And this is really useful because what it means is if you see someone that's not engaged in the behaviours you'd like to see, instead of saying, oh, you need to check up from the neck up, instead you get really curious. You try to think, okay, so here's where you are, here's where you want to be. What's the friction that's getting in the way? What's the stuff about this game that we can change that'll make you more inherently motivated to progress through this? Scott Belsky, the author of Making Ideas Happen, describes friction in some organisations as like death by 1,000 tiny paper cuts. Sometimes there's hurdles of bureaucracy you need to move through. Sometimes for us it's the uncertainty we need to move through, and what we need to really do is rein our focus in and get lots of progressive small wins happening. So it's incredibly incorrect but useful. Just assume that right now you are 100% motivated to act and behave exactly as you are. If you want to change any behaviours, change the game rather than trying to change the player. You may find it opens up more things. Now at this point, usually people are trying to get copies of the models and stuff like that. That's my details up there. Dr. Jason Fox, the book's going to be available out there, back there. If you've got any questions, just shoot them through. I'm terribly slow at emails, but I have an exec assistant now working for me, and she may be able to help as well. But there's some good things ahead. I also have a newsletter that where I share my musings. A few thousand people subscribe to it, including many researchers, so it might be useful for you. Now, there it is. Okay, I didn't need to act it out. I want to share this structures and rituals thing because I think this is a key thing that we can move with. Here is a model which I call contextual momentum, which I think we need to have when it comes to research. This is my attempt to try to add structure to the fuzzy work of progressing through unprecedented territory, the fuzziness of pioneering work. It gets an appropriate balance between short proximal clarity, specificity, and distal fuzziness. A lot of us, the conventional stuff says, it says get really clear about where we want to go to, let's visualize what we want to be doing in 10 years' time. That's kind of rubbish. If you don't know exactly what you're doing in 10 years' time, that's fine. Keep it fuzzy. But if we're looking at what we're doing each day when you wake up, you want to be really clear about what actions you can do that are going to help move things forward. So, it's almost like this one, Google Earth, how you can start off like in street view and you can see things around you, then you can move up to suburb view, to city view, to state view, to country view, to planet view. It's kind of like that when it comes to time. We have our daily stuff and we can progress up through weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly to decade stuff. If someone's asking you what you're going to do in 10 years' time and you don't know, that's fine. That's really fine. It's your EverQuest. If you don't know, that's fine. Just keep seeking. This is the big why questions and stuff. But if we rein it back a little bit, to looking at a yearly view, a lot of people, do you guys still have friends who set yearly resolutions, New Year's resolutions? Yeah, I do. I always find myself snorting with derision anytime my friends do that, because perpetually it continues to do the same thing. They'll set it, they'll go hard on a particular behaviour for 3 weeks, and then it will collapse, and by the time February kicks in, they've just defaulted to where they were before, with maybe a little tinge more resentment as the ravages of time go by. I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions so much. I think that what we need to do each year is just choose one word, a contextual word for our year, and this is where we need to deliberately embrace the fuzziness. If you view our life as though it's an autobiography, in fact, do this, if you just have a quick think. If your life was an autobiography, what did the last few chapters look like? And what would you like the next year's chapter to look like? Are there patterns forming in the last few chapters that you want to disrupt and change? What might be your word for the year beforehand? Last year my word was kingly. I deliberately chose kingly, which is all about me stepping up and all that, growing a beard and stuff. And this year it's prime, which is prime time, prime numbers as well. Very random, but still with an element of order. I've got a friend whose word this year is unleash, and she's running all sorts of wonderful women's leadership things. I've got a friend whose word is receive, where for perpetually he's been very bad at receiving compliments or gifts or offers to help, and so he's deliberately making that part of his life. He stayed over at my place, and I had some bananas that were going off, and I offered him one before they go off, and he hesitated, but then he remembered his word, and so he took one. And so this is all good, but the big focus is at the quarterly level, because at the quarterly level, the yearly word, your contextual word, and this might be it might be thrive, it might be drive, it might be growth, it might be something related to you progressing your research. But at the quarterly level, this is where we focus on the projects that matter. This could be a conversation with you and your supervisor. It's also something for you to think about individually in your own world. What are the 3 projects that matter? So it's almost like a quarterly resolution. Each quarter, think of 3 projects that matter. These projects that matter are things that would otherwise not get done if they did not have a project framework around it. See, a project is different to a goal. A goal might be, I'm going to get fitter. A project might be, I'm going to complete my first half marathon. A goal might be, I'm going to learn how to cook. A project might be, I'm going to have a dinner party where I serve 6 different courses of Spanish food. A goal might be, I'm going to finish this research. That's still a little bit fuzzy. A project might be, I'm going to finish a methodology chapter this quarter. Projects have a deliverable. And what we want to do is each quarter determine what are our 3 projects that matter. Not one project that matters, because if it's one, we may self-sabotage and stuff it up because it's just our one project that matters, we don't want to fail it. If it's 2, we're going to be constantly choosing where do we put our resources, we'll be pairing them up against each other. But 3 projects that matter means that, it might be your personal life, or it might be whatever the things that matter. 3 means we're going to get somewhere, because the other part of the projects that matter is we deliberately seek to fail 50% of our projects that matter. We actively seek to fail 50% of our projects that matter. The reason for this is we want to be okay with failure, but we need to do it properly. If we're going to fail something, we want to fail it really well. You see, this is, just hear me out. This whole, we relish the chance to fail these projects, because if we're failing 50% and you fail one of them, there's a good chance that one of the other ones might work. But if we're more serious about this, the enemy of success is not failure, it's apathy. And the only way, like in science, there's no such thing as failure, there's only disproven hypotheses. The only way that you can effectively fail something is by collecting enough evidence to suggest that it does not support the hypothesis that we create. And so what we're really talking about here is combating non-doing. Each quarter, you can come up with 3 projects that, wow, this fail thing's really rattled a few people, hasn't it? Yeah, that's cool. Cool. That's all right. We've got to be hardcore about this. It's almost a scientific approach. 3 projects that matter. We fail 50% of them. We want to disprove these hypotheses or prove them. And we know that apathy is the enemy here. It's the non-doing, or it's the little work that gets in the way of things. 3 projects that matter each quarter. Monthly, you'll want to have a ritual to make sure that things are still in alignment. This is potentially your meetings with your supervisors, where you've done a whole heap of work, your supervisor still has an eye on the bigger picture and the experience of how to navigate through this stuff, and they can check in with you. Are we still in alignment? The what's matching up to the bigger why of what we're doing here. And so maybe you set your projects that matter with your supervisor, and then you set the monthly schedules in to ensure that you've got alignment. So these little issues, you don't end up 6 months down the track realizing that you've gone on some big tangent that doesn't actually make sense for the research that you're doing. Weekly, you'll want to have a ritual around traction. You want to know that you're making progress in the stuff that matters. So I don't know what this might be in your world. In my world, it was a cup of coffee at the university cafe on Monday mornings, looking back on what the past week was, seeing where I was at, and more importantly, seeing what might have been getting in the way of making progress on the stuff that matters. Because each day, we want to get really smart about what are our mission critical actions. And in fact, just as we got 3 projects that matter each quarter, each day, we want 3 mission critical actions. And this might be a ritual that you have at the end of each day, looking back on your work and determining what are the 3 most important things, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based things that I can get done tomorrow that are going to help to progress some of the projects that matter this quarter for me. A ritual at the end of your day or at the start of each day, you analysing these things and identifying things is really key, because then you can start to change the game that you're playing. Some of the people I work with, they try to get their 3 mission critical actions done by morning tea every day. They just try to get it out of the way before they start to embrace the world of reaction work. This is where you open up an email and you're responding to other people's senses of urgency instead of working on what's important to you. Some people have these things, and one of the mission critical actions might be actually going for a jog or for a run, or getting, going or socialising or things like that. Some of the other neglected stuff that I think this event is actually putting the spotlight on to ensure that you're still incorporating this. It's very, very easy to neglect these things when you've got this big fuzziness and the uncertainty of a research project. So that might be one of them, but it might be other things like one of your mission critical actions is, review this paper. And actually go through and do the review, or it might be write 500 words. And if we just keep them bite-sized specific, we know what our mission critical actions are, but they have context because they're helping part of the projects that matter, which help the bigger project of your hero's journey. And the hero's journey is essentially, which is what a thesis, what a research project is the hero moving through a whole heap of difficult work and eventually getting some sort of results. This is contextual momentum. I talk about it a little bit more in my book, and you can find out a little bit more about it online. It's the one thing I can get you to think about, and I do need to wrap up very soon. I'm going to be hanging out with you with cups of tea afterwards, but I do want you to just anchor this point. So I'm going to get you to talk to your BFF one last time. For maybe this is a really strong BFF relationship that will carry on beyond this little time together. But just for now, I'd just like you to talk about when I'm talking about rituals, when I'm talking about quarterly, monthly, weekly, or daily rituals, anything with this box here, what's some of the things that you think you might want to start to integrate in your research world? That might be a quarterly ritual, monthly, weekly, or daily ritual. I'd like you to talk to your BFF about this. We're going to give you about 1 minute, then I'm going to officially wrap up. Let's do this. And magic. Right, these conversations can continue. It's really important, doubly dissociated metacognitive work that we can actually do to think about the rituals and how we go about this. We have a certain amount of time. If you were right now to pull out your diary, to think about your wall calendar, to think about what it would look like when it comes to your time management on your phone, your iPad, or your desktop, I guarantee most of them will either land on a daily page, weekly, or monthly. This is where we default to. And this is why you have this experience of thinking, where do the months go? I can't believe we're already in September. A lot of the visual structures, how we see our progress, we don't actually have tools that progress past the monthly level. But if you do your research, you can actually find this stuff. Who here, when it comes to being either analog or digital, and I know many are blended, Who here loves good stationery? Like you take notes on paper, you love the feel of good paper and a good pen, and yeah, fantastic. You happily procrastinate on websites like notemaker.com.au or other stationery sites. Yeah, beautiful. The message for you, get deliberate about these physical tools that you have because they help to dictate the work that you do. So invest in your stuff. Buy good stationery, use this stuff if it's helping you to make progress. If you're more on the digital side of things, then keep enthusiastic about the tools that you use. There are constantly new innovations and developments going that may help you to control some of the chaos and entropy in your world and help you to get stuff done. But think, if you can get a quarterly or even a yearly calendar up on your desk, in your office, that helps you to visualize some of the bigger milestones that go beyond each month, this could be a very good tool for you. There's lots more to this. I hope it's given you some food for thought. We're essentially looking here at bridging this gap between where we are and where we want to be. Visualization of progress is probably the key thing, the number one take-through message. Any attempt to visualize progress and the stuff that matters will get you to put more effort into this stuff. I have friends that have activity trackers like Fitbit and other things like that where they'll get home from work and they'll realise that they're only about 85% of their daily goals walk, and so they'll go out and do another couple of walks across the block. You might have tools like 750words.com, which I mentioned before. You might play the email game, which is emailga.me, which is a game around progressing through email very quickly. You might actually create your own games about progressing through the research and have your supervisor be like your referee. And you're creating these games, you're changing the games to make these games work for you. The theme of this week is infinite possibilities, which is really lovely because there is a philosopher called James Cass who wrote a book called Finite and Infinite Games. He sees life as an infinite game that consists of many little finite games. And he says that finite players play within boundaries, infinite players play with boundaries. And the nature of the research you're doing, the bigger purpose is you are actually playing with the boundaries of human knowledge. But in your own world too, you can actually play with the boundaries of the games that you play to make them work better for you. If that doesn't work for you, there's another quote. This is from Andrew Ryan. He's the CEO of Rapture, an underwater city in a game called BioShock. And he says, we all make choices, but in the end, our choices make us. And I'm so glad that you came and you chose to be part of this session today. It's not only going to help shape who you are and your participation in this whole research week, it's going to help shape the research that you do and the planet that we live on. So thank you for being part of this. I'll loiter around with you guys afterwards. I'll try not to be too introverted and we'll have a good chat then. Thanks for being part of this. Over to Ursula.